Hi and welcome to this PowerShell tutorial video. In the last video, we found out how to send an email using the MailKit in PowerShell instead of using the Send-MailMessage. So today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking that script that we created in the last video and we're going to be turning it into a function that we can reuse over and over again because we're going to be putting it inside of a module. And also I'll be showing you guys how to add the CC, BCC, also how to add attachments, and how to also make the body HTML body or a text body. So you'll have all those options in the commandlet that we're making today, which will pretty much replace that send mail message commandlet almost like one for one. You might be missing a few features, but all the more common features anyways that I use a lot of the time will be there. You'll be able to send to multiple people in BCC, multiple people in CC, add one or multiple attachments, create a nice HTML email, and send it out. So let's actually get started. So here is the script that we made last time. So what I'm just going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and create a new file. So to do that in Visual Studio Code, in your folder, you can just click on this little icon here, and then we're going to name the file here. I'm just going to name it mailmodule.psm1. PSM1 for a PowerShell module. So PS1 is a PowerShell script. PSM1 is a PowerShell module. So we're just going to save that there. So the first thing we're of course going to want to bring into this module are going to be these two add types. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy paste them. If you don't know what these add types are, if you go look at the previous video, which I will be putting a link to in the description down below, and in that video, there's actually these two lines that are actually in that description to make it easier for you guys on how to add that. And also I have the download links for you guys in that video, like the install instructions for these two packages. All right, so now that we have that created, now what we're really doing is we are basically building out our function. So what we're going to first do is we're just going to create our function by writing function, and then we're going to call it send-mailKit message, and then open and close curly brackets. Then at the top here, we are just going to put in a square brackets, and we're going to do a commandlet binding. And just open and close parentheses here. And then we're going to do a param, open and close parentheses. And we can just hit enter there for the param. So this is where we're going to be putting in our function parameters for the send MailKit message. So if we go back to our script from yesterday or from the other day, we can see that we have a from field, a to field, subject, body, a server address, a port number. We also take in a credential. And then some of the other things that we don't have in here, like I mentioned, was a BCC field, a CC field, and the attachments. And also if the email is a HTML format or not. So let's get started with all these different parameters. So let's just start with the simple ones that we know for sure we actually need. So we're going to do a square bracket. So it automatically puts in the closing square bracket, and we're going to do parameter. And we're going to make this a mandatory parameter. And we're going to make this of a type string. And this is going to be the from parameter. So this is where we're going to specify our email that it's coming from. Then we're going to do another parameter. Again, this is going to be mandatory. And then this one is going to be, we're not going to type this one. And instead, we are just going to put a 2 with a capital T-O. Oops. 2. Perfect. And then all we're going to do is go down to the next line. So then what we have is from to. So now we know we need CC and BCC. So what I'm going to start doing actually is I'm just going to start copy pasting this parameter here. which for the CC and BCC, we're not going to make it mandatory because those are pretty dependent on if you want to include them or not. Let's go ahead and let's just create those two fields. And then after the CC and BCC, typically in an email, we would fill in the subject. So we're actually not going to put the subject as mandatory, although usually for an email, you would put a subject. But what we will do is we're going to specify the type string, at least on this variable. And we are going to set the default value to just an empty string so we don't get an error. All right, and then our next one. So once we have the subject, we usually put in a body. Now, the body is going to be the same thing. It's not going to be a mandatory field. I'm going to set it as a string. We're going to name it body, and we're going to set the default value to an empty string. Then with the body, then we have attachments. So let's just put attachments here. And attachments, it's not going to be a mandatory field by default, but we're not going to assign a default value. And then our next parameter is going to be, so once we have the attachments, we have the body, we have the subject, we still need the SMTP server, the port number, the account, and then if the message is HTML or not. So let's put in our SMTP server, and we are going to make that a string. And then we're going to create another, and that's going to be mandatory because we need to know for sure what the SMTP server is. We can't really set a default for that. And then our next parameter is going to be the port, and we're going to set that to an int 32. So it has to be a 32-bit integer because we know it's not going to be anything big. And the default port I'm going to set that to is going to be 25. You could probably set this to 25 or 587. Like most default ports are 25, but I feel like these days you really can't use an SMTP server that is under the value that is not 587, or I believe there's 445, I believe. I could be wrong on that one, but 587 is definitely a pretty common port these days with the new security measures in place. And then we're going to have our before last parameter, which is going to be the parameter of body as HTML. And we are going to set this to a parameter type of switch. Now what that means, it's just going to be a switch parameter. So all you have to do is declare the parameter of body as HTML, and it's automatically going to turn that switch on. If it's not there, that value is going to be false. And then our last parameter, but not least, is going to be our parameter of credentials. Now this isn't going to be mandatory because in theory on port 25 on some email systems, you don't actually have to provide a username or password. So we don't actually really need this to be mandatory, although again, in most cases, it will probably be something that you're going to want to put in there. So there's all the fields that I believe we'll need. If we need more throughout the video, I will be adding more potentially, but that should cover us. So we have, just to go over all those again, we have our from field, our to field, our CC, BCC, subject, body, attachments, SMTP server, port, and then we have our switch for body as HTML, and then we have our credentials. So now what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to build out that email. So what we want to do is we want to create these 3 objects here. So I'm actually just going to copy paste these because I just don't really want to type them again. And this also just kind of just makes it a lot easier for us, because if you have that script from the last video, you can simply copy paste them. But really what we have here is going to be our SMTP variable is going to be equal to a new SMTP client from the MailKit object. Message is going to be using the MemeKit, and it's going to be a meme message. And then we have the builder, which is a body builder. So what that does is it really builds out the body of the email, including the attachments. That's what really lets us put in the attachments and also create a nice HTML formatted email or text formatted email. So once we have those, let's go ahead and let's start putting in our values here. So the first thing we're going to want to do is let's put in our from value in the email. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a message dot from dot add, and we are going to add our from address here because we know it's a mandatory address. It's always going to have it, so that's going to be there. Now we're going to add our to field. Now if we just did a message dot to dot add and then to, that would only allow us to add one to object. If someone provided an array of multiple addresses to send to, it would actually give us an error. So what we need to do is we need to do a for each. And what I like to do is do for each $person in $2, open and close curly brackets. And then we're going to do message dot to dot add, and we're going to add person. All right, so that's good there. So then our next value is going to be the CC and BCC. So before we do those, because CC and BCC are actually just optional variables here, we're going to add a if in front of it. So we're going to do if CC. So if the CC exists, then we're going to do a for each person in CC, open and close curly brackets, message dot CC dot add, and we're going to add person. So for the BCC, we are going to take that exact same code, just copy paste it and change the variables to be referencing that BCC. And then in the bottom here, what we can just do is just do message dot BCC dot add person, or you could have just simply added the B in front of the CC. So now that we have our from, to, CC, BCC filled out, let's go ahead and let's take care of the subject. So since the subject by default is going to be null, so no matter what, we know it's going to be filled out. Let's go ahead and do a message dot subject equals subject. Then our body is next. So for our body, it's going to be a little bit different because we have our switch here, which kind of tells us if it's going to be an HTML message or not. So what we're going to want to first do is do an if body as HTML. So if the body as HTML is true, and then a else statement. So we have both. So if it is true, we're going to go ahead and reference our builder dot HTML body equals body. And then if it's not true, we're going to do builder dot text body equals body. So that will just tell it if we have our flag that we are sending a email as HTML, we're going to create HTML body. If not, just create the body as a text body. So very, very simple there. So then our next one is going to be the attachments. So once again, the attachments was not a mandatory value. It has no default value. So we're going to do if attachments. And then we're going to do a for each attachment in attachments, because there might be multiple attachments and we want to make sure that we add all of them and we don't cause any errors. And we're going to actually put this in builder.attachments.add. And then we're going to do attachment and close that off. All right, so we have our attachments, we have our body, we have our from, to, BCC, and CC. And that was pretty much it for the email. So then if we look back here, then we just have to build the body and put that into the message. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a message dot body, and that's going to be equal to our builder dot to message body, and then close parentheses. All right, and then what we need to do is we just need to connect it to our SMTP server. So let's go ahead and reference our SMTP object dot connect, and we're going to connect to our SMTP server, and then the port, and I'm going to pass the value of false for the last bit here. And then what we want to do is we want to also authenticate if we have to. So once again, because the credential was not a mandatory value, if credential, then we are going to do a SMTP dot authenticate, and in here we're going to put in credential dot username, and then we can pass in credential dot get network credential dot open and close parentheses dot password. I believe that that's going to be our option here. And this could be a lowercase g because it's a method, so that should work. And now all we need to do is send our message. So let's do SMTP dot send message, and then we're going to do SMTP dot disconnect, and we're going to do true because we want to disconnect, and then let's do SMTP dot dispose, so we get rid of our SMTP object just to reduce any potential problems that might come up. So that should be it for everything. So let's go ahead and let's save this here. And let's see if this works. So let's open up a new file here, and we're going to do test email.ps1. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a import module, and we are going to import the module that we just created here. So for me, it's going to be cscripts.sendEmail mail module.psm1, and then we're going to import that. And it says expression is missing because there is a comma. Let's see where the error might be here. Oh, and right here, I actually had a comma after my credentials saying that there would be another parameter. Let's just take that out, and let's go back in here and run our import module. So that worked out just great. So now if we do send, the mail message pops up, but ours is going to be send MailKit message. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do from, and we're going to do from test JackedProgrammer at outlook.com. Our to field, let's go ahead, let's just send it to one address for now. We're just going to send it to test JackedProgrammer at outlook.com. And our subject, let's just put that to test here. And then our body, what we're actually going to do is we're going to do a little HTML body here. So we're going to put in a h1 tag and write test. We're going to close that h1 tag, and then we're going to do an h3 tag and see test h3, and we're going to close that tag as well. So we should have one big text blob that says text, and then a bit smaller text block that says test h3. And we are going to do body as HTML. And our SMTP server is going to be, smtp-mail.outlook.com. And then the port is going to be 587. And then we're not going to put any attachments just yet. Let's go ahead and let's pass in a credential. And all I'm going to do is actually just pass in the get credential. So it will prompt me actually for my credential here. So if I run this code, so it's prompting me for my user account. So let me just put in my email here. And then my password. Hopefully I type it in correctly the first time. Perfect. So it did send out correctly. So now if we look here, we can actually see that the email, we see test here and test h3 a bit smaller. And we have that today at 8:34, which is perfect. So everything's sent out just fine. As we can see, there's no attachments though. So let's go ahead and let's put in some attachments here. So let's just do this. Let's put it in, so it just makes more sense right after body as HTML. Let's put in some attachments, and let's put in multiple attachments. So we're going to put in an array of attachments, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a little test file here, shift right click. I'm just going to copy the path. I'm just going to paste that in here and paste it a second time. And then what I'm going to do is for the to field is let's actually convert this also to an array. And let's send it to my actual email. So JackedProgrammer@outlook.com. And then we're going to close the parentheses here. And let's send that email over. And once again, it's prompting me for my credentials. So let's just put that in here. It's just adding the attachments. We should be getting it fairly soon. So here's the new email with the same text, and we can see the two attachments. So everything did work. We can see that it got sent to 2 email addresses, which is perfect. So that's really about it. And then the other thing that we could do, which is kind of neat, is with the credential here, is let's take away the get credential. And let's just put in account here. And then what we'll do is we're actually going to take in account is going to be equal to import CLI.xml, and then the path is going to be C scripts send email outlook.xml. We can pass that in here, and that works just as well. So we should see another email come in. There it is. So as you can see, that does work great as well. So this will really replace pretty much your Send-MailMessage. I will be putting this on my GitHub, so you guys will have access to it. Another thing that you guys would be able to do as well is create something like this, which would be params, and then create that with like an at, open and close curly bracket, and then put from equals, and then put that in here. 2 equals, and let's just put, that makes it a lot nicer if you have it all your variables in the hash table, as we've seen before. I just want to show you guys that it does work even for custom made modules and functions. So let's just paste that in here. So now we have subject, which is equal to test, body, which is going to be equal to this. And let's do attachments, which is going to be equal to this array here. Then SMTP server, and then we've got port 587. Make sure we don't have anything missing here. Our SMTP server is going to be this. We already have our port. Our credential is going to be account. So that is done. And then we are going to have our, I believe the only way to pass in a switch, just body as HTML, is going to be equal to true. I believe that should be good. And now our mail message, we're going to reference this as at params. And then if we send this off here, oops, and that I should not have put that as a variable. You guys probably noticed that before I did. So if we send this off, everything seems to have worked just fine. And then we should receive our next email here. So there it is. And then if we want to see this without the body as HTML to see what it would look like, all we need to do is just remove this and run this once again. And then we should see the email come in with just the actual HTML as plain text because we did not put the body as HTML. So that is pretty much how you make that commandlet, how you use it in a bunch of different scenarios. You guys can use it instead of the send mail message. You guys can add more functionality to it if you guys wanted to. I mean, there's tons more that you can set up with the different meme message, SMTP client, and the body builder. You can put a lot more into this. But like I said, like these are probably the more common parameters that you would probably use in the send mail message. There's also encoding in send mail message, but I don't see that being very, very useful these days, for me anyways. But the CC, BCC, I use it all the time. Subject and body, of course, is always very useful. The ability to send attachments is very, very useful. The ability to really make that an HTML body is super handy if you want to make nice email reports, which if you guys want to see that, how to make some nice like tables and different types of reports in emails, let me know down in the comments below, and I could definitely make a video on that, get some stuff from the event viewer, format it in a table, format that in a nice HTML body, and send that by email. Let me know down in the comments. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell to be notified when that next video comes out, and I will see you guys on the next video.